A massing study in Revit allows us to explore different forms and shapes of a building before even creating the first wall or floor object. To do this in a Revit environment, we first need to set up our different elevations. In this case, I'd like to come in here to the south elevation. And when I use the term set up our different elevations, I'm really talking about our different building elevations, which means our different levels. Now, what I'd like to do is draw in 2 more levels. So underneath the Architecture tab, I'm going to select on Level. And these are going to be 2 more levels, and they'll be 10 feet apart. So we'll click and click again, and then click, and then click again to have 4 levels. I'm going to hit Escape a couple of times to get out of the command. We can see that we have new levels here underneath the project browser. Now, what we need to do is set up each of these levels so that they're viewing level 1. So when we start to draw our shape in, we'll be able to see what the general shape and form of our shapes are, even if we're working all the way up on the 4th floor. So double click on level 4, go to its properties, and then underneath Underlay, change this to be level 1 and select on Apply. Now we need to do the same thing again with level 3, go into Properties, change its underlay to be level 1, and click on Apply. Now that we've done that, we can go into level 1, move to the Massing and Site tab on the ribbon. From here, there's an option called In Place Mass. If you select on In Place Mass, it'll ask you to give this mass a name. And I'd like to call this Main Building, and then select on OK. From here, we'll pick on the Rectangle tool because that's the shape that I want the base of my building to be. We'll click, and then we'll create a building which is about 40 by 100. It doesn't have to be exactly that, but as long as it's close, it'll be fine for this example. And then click. Now we also need to create what the top of this building is going to look like. So we'll double click on level 4. And the reason why we set the underlay is so that we see this gray box. If we hadn't, we wouldn't be able to see it. And what I'd like to do now is have this building have kind of an odd shape. I'd like it to flare out a little bit toward the top. So to do this, I'm going to select on the Pick Lines tool. And from here, there's an offset value. I'm going to have this offset 4 feet. And because it's flaring out, what we want is that dashed line that shows up if we highlight over one of these lines to be on the outside. Go all the way around the perimeter of this shape. The next thing I'd like to do is go to the 3-dimensional house, the default 3D view button up at the top of the screen. And we can see those 2 shapes that we just drew in at the appropriate levels. Now we should select on the Modify tool so that we can click, hold our mouse button down, and then highlight over each of these boxes that we just drew. From here, go to Create Form and click on Solid Form. This is going to create a solid form shape, and this is the shape that I want our building to be. Now select on Finish Mass to finish this up. Next, we need to go to level 1 floor plan. And I'd like to draw in a secondary shape right here off to the side. And in this case, it's going to be underneath the Massing and Site tab, In Place Mass. And I'm just going to call this Entrance and select on OK. From here, pick on the Line command and then just draw in just sort of a general shape that's about maybe 16 by 44. Come up to wherever feels comfortable to you, draw it over. The only thing is it needs to be one continuous line if you follow it all the way around. I'd like this to come up to level 3. So double click on level 3 now. There we can see that shape, start to see that flare. And in this case, I just want this to be a straight rectangle going right on up. So to do that, we could either use the Pick Lines tool or we could just trace around it by just drawing lines, just like we did before to draw the initial base shape. And now pick the endpoints of each one of these, sort of play connect the dots going all the way on around like so. Go back into that 3D view because this is the easiest way to select on these individual lines. Click on the Modify, window around those shapes, Create Form, Solid Form. Now we have a secondary form. Something else that we can do now that we have 2 forms that are going to be actually crossing each other. Actually, one thing we need to do first is click on Finish Mass right here so that this mass and this are now touching each other. Now, the next thing that we can do is we can select on one of these forms. And what I'd like to do is try to join these 2 forms together. And there's an option here called Join when you select on one of the masses. I'm going to pick this form and now this form. To cut that extra mass out. Even though they're still independent of each other, they're now kind of joined together with the extra material being cut out of them. One other thing I'd like to do is come in here to the massing again. Once again, go to Level 1 Floor Plan. And from here, there's an option called Place Mass. If you select on that, it'll say that there aren't any mass families currently loaded in. Do you want to load one into the project? Say yes to that. Move here to Mass. And now open up the Mass folder. And from here, we can see there's a variety of different shapes already available to us inside of Revit. And we can choose any of these shapes off the list for a shape that we might want to bring into our project. Now, I really don't care which shape that you decide to bring in. In my case, I think I'm going to select on Gable and then click on Open. It's now bringing that gable shape in, and I'm just going to try to put that gable shape right about in this area right here. Click to place it. I'm going to hit the Escape key a couple of times to get out of the command, and now we're going to take a look at this in a 3D view. Now you can see that I have this gable shape right here. It's sort of pulled away from the other mass, and that's okay. If we want to bring it up close to the other mass, we can do that as well. Double click on Level 1, select back on this again, and we can see that there's arrows associated with this shape. And by clicking and pulling on the arrows, we can always pull this back and align it with the face of the mass. And if we look at that in a 3D view, we'll now see that the one goes back to the other. In fact, this is a mass just like this one was a mass. So what that means is that we can select on this, come up here to Join, and if we wanted to join this and this together, we could. And we can see it sort of clipped this off, and now this is its own mass. So we can begin to explore our different shapes by using underneath the massing tools In Place Mass and Place Mass. Place Mass has a series of already defined shapes, while In Place Mass allows us to draw and define all those different kinds of shapes and forms that could make up our building structure.